I am trying to balance charity with respect. We're all encouraged to give more, to be aware of how much families are experiencing stress. And so we're seeing angel trees, we're seeing charity events, we're seeing meals for the whole community. And as a extension specialist, I think that's important, that builds community. But then as a volunteer for Thrive, I also have to be aware that a handout is not a hand up.
Kansas, with a population of just over 2.8 million, has 342,000 people who live in poverty. K-State Research and Extension is collaborating with Thrive, Bridges Out of Poverty, and Ripples of Change in 21 Kansas communities to help reduce poverty by building skills and relationships that strengthen families and individuals. On today's Sound Living, reducing generational poverty. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. Kansas State University Associate Professor and Extension Specialist in the School of Family Studies and Human Services, Elaine Johannes, and Tana Warner, a coach for the Thrive program in Northeast Kansas, explain how Thrive uses a walk with me approach to break the cycle of poverty. And with the holiday season underway, Johannes says that now is a good time to talk about how to help those in need, because poverty is not a seasonal issue. It's an everyday, year-round issue.
Jeff, you're right. Many times we think about the holidays as being such a festive time, and it can be for a lot. But then we also have to think about where Kansas families are financially, in dealing with stress in the household and in the community and in their jobs. And the poverty rate in our state is not changing very much. It's still fairly high. Almost a third of families that are considered poor are working. They're the working household. And then, of course, 13% of most of the Kansas population are at the federal poverty guideline. That hasn't changed a lot, and it's pervasive. It's not just here in Manhattan. It's not just in Wyandotte. It's not just in Wichita. It's across the whole state. And for people that live on the western part of the state who work on farms, we also are seeing some real concern about where farmers are going to be. The economy hasn't improved. There is lots of stress out there. So when we think about the holidays coming up, I do think we have to be aware of the third of the Kansas population that may find it to be of real stress.
And almost 13% are food insecure, which is another problem.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's kind of a surprise here in our state. We are an agricultural state. We produce food, but getting access to food, if you don't have a car, if you can't actually get to the food bank, some are just open 8 to 5. Well, my gosh, if the person who's trying to make it a go works all the time, how do they get there? How do they actually get the food? And we not only have deserts of food, again, that's the word used when there's not access to actually food, but then we've also heard about things called food swamps. Those are places where there are food items, but they really don't have a lot of healthy vitamins, nutrition. Again, this is not really my field. I'm just aware that the families that we're working with across the state who are at the poverty guideline, who are trying to make it a go, don't have a lot of choice. So as a whole state, I think we need to be aware and we need to care.
Introduce us to Tana, because she is someone who is out there on the front lines as a coach with the Thrive program, and she's working to bridge that gap between us and Extension.
Yes. Tana is considered a coach for the Thrive work here in the Manhattan area. Thrive is the name that has been given this particular program that creates opportunities for families to learn, families to build new skill, and families to build relationships. And those relationships are between someone who probably is considered middle class or upper class. They may have a resource or two that maybe the family that they're matched with may not have. Families who volunteer to be part of Thrive have decided to change their lives, have decided to kind of look at themselves, but then also to understand that poverty is something that the whole community has to be involved with. It's not the family's fault. They are not weak. They don't have to feel shame. So somebody who is a volunteer is matched with a family in Thrive, and as a team, Tana helps them. Tana, you provide development of skill, lessons, and also a listening ear. So when the families with the volunteer need to have extra help, an extra resource, Tana, you provide that particular role as the coach for Thrive.
That is correct.
What are you learning so far? I know you're relatively new in this position, but what have you seen so far, and what are you learning?
I have learned there is a lot of work to be done. I don't know that I necessarily understood that before. It's real easy to go through life and just think you're the only struggling person, or that there's people worse off than what you had. So it's been eye-opening. But it's also really important to bridge that gap. So those are two of my biggest takeaways so far in my 3 weeks of being a coach.
Well, in terms of this, as we approach the holidays, we were talking off air about some of the things that go on that add even more stress to someone who is already stressed. Parties that you have to go to, work events, work gifts, potlucks, all of that adds up. And if you've got a really tight budget to begin with, you're almost out of options.
Absolutely. There are not food banks open for extra party stuff that you need. And trying to build that in an already tight budget is almost impossible to do.
What are we to do then, Elaine? How do we approach this as people who think that we should be doing things during the holiday? How do we make what we do really make a difference?
One of the things, as not only a specialist with Extension, but also as a volunteer for Thrive, I am trying to balance charity with respect. We're all encouraged to give more, to be aware of how much families are experiencing stress. And so we're seeing angel trees, we're seeing charity events, we're seeing meals for the whole community. And as a extension specialist, I think that's important, that builds community. But then as a volunteer for Thrive, I also have to be aware that a handout is not a hand up, that I need to make sure that whatever I do as a volunteer, the families that I volunteer with have also a chance and opportunity to give back and to give with, not to feel that they're being subservient to the volunteer, to the middle class, modeling the fact that this is a community, that we all understand holidays can be stressful for anyone, and not to overdo. You know, the consumerist ideas that maybe we see a lot around the holiday time, we need to take a step back and think about if we are really helping, or are we creating more of a dependency and more of an opportunity for people to feel shame or to feel not part of community. For example, the potlucks, the gift exchange, is that really helping? Especially when a family knows, gosh, during the holidays, during a semester break, during the kids being out of school, I'm probably going to have to do childcare or pay for childcare or pay for extra food. One of the things that I think we would recommend, and I'm saying we because of the poverty work that's being done across the state, Thrive is just one of about 21 different community groups that are doing poverty work through matching of the volunteer with the household. So some of the things we've heard from our colleagues across the state, that volunteers, people in community, can offer to serve families, like even providing childcare, providing a special weekend opportunity during the holidays where the kids can come and be with other kids and the parents can have a little time away. Not just waiting for the families to ask for things, not waiting for there to be the need for food, providing a community response, not necessarily, like I said, the handout, and thinking differently about what the holidays mean. If we have a lot of our families that are embarrassed to put their name in the hat for special gifts for the kids, then why should they have to put their name in the hat? Let's just go ahead and give. Let's just go ahead and have events that are equitable way to celebrate versus making it such an extravagance that people are embarrassed, they are ashamed, they are uncomfortable. You know, in the United States, and I think in this state, we are aware that most of us are just a paycheck away from being either at the poverty level or very near. And so when we put on that kind of thinking and that kind of hat, when we think about things, it makes it more comfortable. It makes community occur during these holidays where those that have don't feel like the have-nots need them. That's not what we're wanting. It's more of the equal back and forth.
A lot of this sounds to me like being a good neighbor. A lot of these are things that probably 50 years ago, you knew when somebody in town was struggling and people just naturally helped out.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, and Tana, I think you've seen this also with Thrive, is that when we meet, and the majority of the communities that have a Thrive kind of effort underway, all of us meet once every week. But when we do meet, we've discovered that sometimes we don't know who's considered a volunteer and who's there to be part of the community because they are a participant. And I don't know if you've seen that kind of a confusing mess of wonderful.
It's one of the best things I love about Thrive is when we have our community meeting and we have provided meal, there is no distinction between the allies that are volunteering and the leaders that are participating in the program. You really cannot tell. It is a beautiful thing to watch at every table a family being built, whether that's building up the family that's participating or including the ally or an ally who maybe is isolated in their own life and they have community when they come there. The relationship and the community that we build is something we do well.
It was just last week that one of our extension agents came. She had us talk about our own food bills. I had to talk about what I spent my money on. And then we started to look at, okay, what do the grocery store ads reveal? Are there certain costs that we could save? Are there things on sale? How can we start planning meals? And we were doing it as a team. We were doing it across well-off families, those that were having a tough go, families of 1, families of 7, and it was wonderful. And the extension agent was doing that around not only just really good curriculum, but also an understanding of how you build community and how you take folks from where they actually are. So we had some really good opportunity to work across teams.
And Extension is playing a pretty big role in this whole process, regardless of the name of the group.
Mm-hmm. Tana may not be aware of this, but you soon will, that you'll find that there are Extension agents across the whole state in these 21 different community groups that are providing education not only about how to make a good, healthy meal and how to shop, but also how do you look for jobs? How do you write a resume? How do you actually apply? And this is a timely thing too. Parenting. What are some of the parenting tips that can help a parent get through these stressful holidays or just provide that extra support for a parent who may have children who are infants to clear up to age 16? You know, how do you do all of that? So we also have agents who are teaching a babysitting class during the holidays. And again, that kind of keeps that teenager occupied, but also learning really good skills so they can go back and help mom, you know. So our extension agents are also aware of how to create community groups too. Many of them are involved with the poverty work, but from a community perspective. How do you start looking at data? Where do families live? Do they have access to housing? Gosh, what do the jobs pay? Are they all below a living wage? So we have Extension actively involved across the whole state with poverty work and family work.
That's Elaine Johannes, an associate professor at Kansas State and an extension specialist in K-State School of Family Studies and Human Services. Tana Warner is a coach for the Thrive program in Northeast Kansas. For more information on Thrive, Ripples of Change, or Bridges Out of Poverty, contact your local extension office. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.